The internet is on fire and fans can't believe what they've just seen. A stunning video has surfaced showing Chrissy Lampkin, JimJones' longtime companion, having a private encounter with none other than Camron. The shaky but undeniable film shows the two in a dimly lit VIP section, leaning close, speaking, and laughing in a manner that has thrown the internet into a frenzy. After witnessing the footage, JimJones lost control and violently assaulted Camron in the studio. According to eyewitnesses, Jim's energy level was low from the minute he entered the room. He didn't say anything. He simply swung. Fists flew, chairs were pushed down, and the entire incident was recorded on someone's phone. That tape is now going viral, adding fuel to the flames and generating heated disputes on social media. Was Chrissy being unfaithful? Did Camron breach the line? Is there more to this story than meets the eye? Emotions are running high, loyalty is being challenged, and Harlem's streets have never seemed colder. Stay tuned, for the controversy is far from done. It all started on a calm Sunday night when the internet erupted into turmoil. A grainy video clip began to circulate across all media, and within hours, it was ubiquitous. The blurry picture shows Chrissy Lampkin in a dimly lit lounge, sitting far too close to none other than Camron. There was something wrong about the body language. Intimate, familiar, and a sense of proximity that immediately sparked suspicion. Chrissy leaned close, her hand barely stroking Cam's knee, as Cam muttered something into her ear that caused her to grin in a manner fans hadn't seen in years. For a brief period, the camera captured her laying her palm on his chest. It barely lasted a few seconds, but it was enough to ignite the match that would burn everything down. The title of the video was simple yet explosive: Chrissy caught on camera with Camron. With that, the internet went into complete meltdown mode. JimJones was at home when he first watched the footage. According to individuals close to him, he stopped mid-scroll, gazed at the screen in bewilderment, and repeated it 3 times before tossing his phone across the room. He didn't say anything. He simply got up and went out of the home, vanishing for hours. When he returned, his eyes were red and his face appeared as if he had not slept. It wasn't simply betrayal, it was humiliation. To witness the lady he'd been faithful to for so many years get intimate with one of his longest friends, and occasionally rivals, was a pain too deep to explain. And the worst part, this was not simply a hearsay, it was on video. The streets were talking, and Jim couldn't ignore it. Overnight, the internet caught fire. Fans swarmed Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with reactions. The hashtags #JimScam and #ChrissyExposed were trending in every major metropolis. Old footage began to surface, moments from reality programs in which Chrissy and Cam appeared to share suspiciously flirtatious energy. Statements Cam made that were harmless, but now felt like signs everyone overlooked. People were studying body language from 10-year-old videos, developing ideas and connecting connections that may not have been intended to connect. However, the story had already begun. Chrissy and Camron were hiding something, and it was now out in the open. However, as fans speculated, Jim spiraled. Insiders said he spent the whole night pacing his house, rewatching the video on repeat, attempting to figure out what went wrong. He contacted his mother, Nancy Jones, and broke down. "Ma, I don't even know who she is anymore," he reportedly told her. Nancy, always protective of her kid, did not hesitate. "You need to face this head on, baby. Do not let them play you like this." And that's when things started to become heated. Jim was not going to let this slip. Not this time. The following day, JimJones was entirely silent online. No stories, no posts, and no reactions. Fans began to panic, believing he was preparing something serious. Behind the scenes, Jim was trying to contact Camron. He texted. He called. No answer. According to a close acquaintance of Jim's, he wasn't even angry with Chrissy at first. He only wanted answers from Cam. "So, why would you do this to me?" The stillness from Camron was deafening. It was as if he pretended the whole event didn't exist. This infuriated Jim even more. 2 days later, everything detonated again. Someone shared a screenshot of Camron's private DM in which he laughed off the issue and replied to a fan, "Lol, Jim acting like I snatched his chick. She grew." That single message lighted the flame. Fans began tagging Jim like crazy. The post became viral within minutes. According to sources, JimJones watched it and snapped entirely. He grabbed his vehicle keys, contacted a few of his contacts and said, "We need to talk, face to face." But this was not going to be a conversation. Not anymore. According to accounts, Jim headed directly to a Harlem studio where Camron was scheduled to work that day. People attempted to stop him. His boss, assistant, and even Chrissy called, but he didn't respond. His mind was set. He had that look in his eyes. A source said, it looked as if he was going to commit something irreversible. When Jim drove up to the studio, he didn't even knock. He flung open the door and stormed in. Camron was in the middle of a session, joking with a few buddies, and had no idea what was about to happen. According to eyewitnesses, Jim marched straight up to Camron, said nothing, and hit him square in the jaw. The room became absolutely quiet. Then anarchy ensued. Cam stepped back, stunned, and said, "What the heck is wrong with you?" But Jim wasn't done. "Do you think this is funny?" he cried, grabbing Camron by the shirt. "Do you believe you can play me like this and laugh about it online?" Cam attempted to shove him away, but Jim delivered another strike. It took two of Cam's lads to get Jim off, and even then he continued yelling, "I trusted you. I took you inside my house. And this is how you will repay me?" Security raced in seconds later to separate them, but the harm had already been done. Someone in the room captured a portion of the fight on video, and it was immediately available online. Just as Chrissy's video went viral, Jim and Cam's altercation was being repeated on every television. Fans were astonished. "This ain't no prank," one person said. "This is real beef." Some blamed Camron. Others claimed Jim overreacted. But everyone agreed on one thing: the Dipset brotherhood was definitely gone. The treachery went further than anyone thought. Even after the battle, Jim wasn't done. He went live on Instagram a few hours later, his lips slightly broken and his eyes still filled with wrath. "I ain't no clown," he said. "Never toy with me like that. Loyalty is paramount. I don't care if you've been with me from day one. If you cross me, it's over." The comment section erupted. Fans sent heart emojis, fire symbols, and comments like he's speaking facts. Meanwhile, Chrissy had failed to say a word. She had gone silent, exacerbating the speculation. What was she hiding? Why didn't she deny anything? As the video of the fight accumulated millions of views, additional doubts began to arise. How long had that been going on? Was this a one-time incident or something more serious? Why would Camron jeopardize everything, his relationship and reputation, for a moment with Chrissy? Most importantly, what will Chrissy say if she eventually breaks her silence? JimJones wasn't seeking for solutions anymore. He had already made up his mind. He believed that both of them had deceived him, and the rest of the world was aware of this. The industry began to respond as the smoke from JimJones and Camron's heated altercation cleared. Bloggers, influencers, and media outlets could not get enough. Shade Room, Mahler Alert, Hollywood Unlocked. Everyone was releasing fight footage and speculating on what would happen next. It was no longer just amusement. It was a full-fledged controversy that swept through hip-hop's inner circle like wildfire. And in the midst of all this pandemonium, one voice stayed silent: Chrissy's. No post, no narrative, no remark. Fans began to turn on her, claiming that her silence was as loud as the video. They sought answers. They wanted a confession. At the very least, a denial. But Chrissy had withdrawn from the spotlight, which made everything worse. Meanwhile, Camron attempted to play damage control. Within 24 hours of the brawl, he released a video on his account of himself smiling with his team, downplaying the entire situation as a misunderstanding. "Do you really believe everything you see online?" he remarked, smirking. "Come on, dude. That is family. This isn't really profound." However, the marks on his face said otherwise. Fans weren't buying it. The comment section was flooded with clown emojis and snake images. People were calling him out for breaking the holy rule of brotherhood. No matter how calm he attempted to appear, the story was now out of his control. JimJones had made it public, and there was no going back. Behind closed doors, Chrissy was plummeting. According to someone in her close circle, she was absolutely overwhelmed by the criticism. She didn't expect the video to go viral, the person explained. She'd assumed it would remain private. Now she feels as if the entire world is against her. Chrissy allegedly broke down in tears, locking herself in her apartment and ignoring calls from friends. The guilt was sinking in, as was the terror. The dread that all she had established with Jim was now irreversibly broken. She had been with him through ups and downs, including love and grief, but this seemed different. It seemed like the end. And then, just when things couldn't get much worse, a second video surfaced. It was photographed from a different perspective, clearer, brighter, longer. This one didn't just show Chrissy and Camron sitting close together. It also showed them holding hands under the table, laughing like two individuals lost in their private world. The video finished with Camron leaning in and Chrissy whispering something into his ear, prompting him to nod slowly and confidently. It wasn't a flirtation anymore. This was confirmation. The internet went into full turmoil again. Fans were shocked, upset, and enraged. How could she do this to Jimmy? This is treachery on another level. They truly played him for a fool. The strain was increasing, and it was evident that something had to give. JimJones viewed the second video while in the studio. According to a close colleague, he did not flinch this time. He was numb, the buddy explained. It was as if his heart had already been torn out, leaving nothing to shatter. Jim did not say much. He simply nodded slowly, switched off his phone, and began recording music. But the lyrics were darker and harsher. Lines like "they stabbed me in the back and smiled while they did it," and "trust no soul, not even the ones you lay with," began to appear in subsequent excerpts. It was obvious he was utilizing the booth to bleed out his misery. But even music couldn't conceal the storm growing within him. Behind the scenes, Monica Scott Young was in full crisis mode. The LoveAndHipHop producer realized that this drama had the potential to either ruin everything or create the most famous plot in franchise history. She began making calls, hoping to obtain exclusive interviews, raw footage, or anything else that might capitalize on the hype. "We need to get them on camera," she instructed her staff. "If they fall apart, we will show every second of it." Meetings were scheduled accordingly. Deals were discussed. There was talk of a live reunion spectacular with Jim, Chrissy, and Camron in front of a global audience. Ratings gold. However, not everyone was on board. Chrissy first refused to sign off. She felt exploited, embarrassed. She did not want to confront Jim on national television. But Mona understood how to press the appropriate buttons. "You want to tell your side, correct?" she stated. "You want them to hear the facts, not just hearsay." Chrissy hesitated but finally agreed, with one condition: Camron had to be present. She did not want to endure the heat alone. Cam, ever the showman, acted without hesitation. He recognized the chance and seized it. "Let's clear the air," he said. "If they want drama, we will provide it to them." As news circulated that all three had agreed to perform, tickets to the live event sold out in hours. Fans were camping outside the studio. Bloggers were setting up interviews. Everyone wanted to see the explosion firsthand. Behind the curtain, Jim was also prepping. His motivations, however, were not about ratings or atonement. He desired closure. He wanted to look them both in the eyes and say all he couldn't express with his fists or over the phone. He informed his manager, "I'm going in with agony, but I'm leaving with serenity." Whatever it looks like. On the day of the filming, tensions were really high. The green rooms were separate. Security was increased. The mood backstage was heavy with apprehension. Chrissy came in all black, her eyes masked beneath heavy shades. She appeared scared, but determined. Cam turned up cheerful, chatting with the staff, and behaving as if nothing was wrong. But Jim stepped in silently. His face was stone. His body language indicated constraint. The room fell silent as the cameras began to film, and the three sat across from each other beneath the bright studio lights. The host greeted everyone and wasted no time. "Jim, let us start with you. What would you like to say to Chrissy and Camron today?" Jim's jaw tightened as he stared at Chrissy and then at Cam. "I trusted y'all," he replied, his voice low and heavy. "For years, through everything. You threw it aside as if it didn't matter." Chrissy attempted to answer, but he cut her off. "I gave you my heart. I offered you my allegiance. Then you slapped me in the face." Cam leaned forward, attempting to explain. "Look, guy, it wasn't like that. It's just occurred. Feelings were complicated, but Jim wouldn't have it. The brother's sentiments for their girl are not complex. That's not complicated. That is filthy." The crowd gasped. The tension was palpable. Chrissy eventually spoke, and her voice cracked. "I never intended to hurt you, Jim. I swear, it wasn't meant to be like this." But her comments rang hollow. Too little, too late. The presenter attempted to shift the subject toward healing, but the harm was obvious. Every gaze, pause, and unsaved thought lingered in the air like smoke from an unquenchable fire. And as the episode progressed and each individual revealed their version of events, it became clear that this wasn't simply a love triangle gone awry. It was a collapse of trust, of friendship, of family. It was not going to be resolved in a single televised meeting. The tension in the room was intolerable. JimJones glanced at Chrissy, his eyes filled with a mix of treachery and pain. Chrissy could barely face him in the eyes, the guilt hanging heavy on her shoulders. The crowd, cameras, and millions of spectators at home were all on the edge of their seats, waiting for the next revelation. It was evident that this wasn't simply another reality television scene. It was a watershed moment for everyone involved. And just as the tension was about to break, the presenter, trying to recover control, begged Camron to speak out. "Cam, where are you in all of this? Your actions appear to have heightened tensions between Jim and Chrissy." Camron reclined back in his chair, a small grin spreading across his face. "Nobody escalated anything. It's all about perspective, man," he remarked, shrugging lightly. "Jim got his feelings wounded. Chrissy got hers. And I got mine. We are all simply trying to make sense of this disaster." The host pressed on. "But Cam, you and Chrissy, this isn't all about feelings, is it? You two were quite close. And now Jim is calling it nasty. How would you reply to that?" Cameron's smirk faded somewhat as he leaned forward. "I got it. I do. But what you don't realize is that occasionally people grow apart. Things change. Feelings alter. What was formerly present is no longer present." He hesitated, looking across at Chrissy. "That's just life, man." Chrissy's face paled, and her hands trembled slightly. "This isn't just life, Camron." She muttered, "This is betrayal. Do you know that? What we shared, what I had with Jim, was authentic. It wasn't simply a fling. This was everything. I wrecked it all for what? For what, Cam?" The grief in her voice was palpable, and Camron appeared to soften at her remarks. "Look, I am not suggesting it is simple. I'm not saying it was correct," Camron said, his tone altering. "But I'm saying it was inevitable. There is no going back from it. Sometimes life pulls you in ways you don't want to go, and all you can do is follow where it goes." He gazed at Jim, his eyes hardening. "I didn't want this to turn out like this. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't see it coming." The words struck Jim like a smack in the face. He rose hastily, his chair scraping against the floor. The studio lights blinked, and the audience gasped. "You didn't want it to end out like this?" "No, camera. You wanted this. You wanted it everything, and you got it. Now look at us. Look at what you've accomplished. You took my woman, my friend, and turned it into a joke," Jim said, his voice rising. "This is not a reality program for you. This is actual life, and you have wrecked everything. All we created, all we stood for." Chrissy stared down at her hands, the weight of Jim's words settling in. She could not meet his gaze. How had they gotten to this point? How did it get from being a lovely relationship to this? From their shared past to this moment of devastation? She had no solutions, only the agony of realizing it was her responsibility. The presenter attempted to settle the situation, but it was evident that harm had been done. Jim, do you believe there is any possibility for reconciliation? Can this be fixed, or is it done for good? Jim took a deep breath and exhaled gently, as if attempting to keep his emotions under control. His fists clenched at his sides. I don't know. I'm not sure if it can be fixed, he said, his voice softer. What happens when everything you believed in crumbles? When your best friend and wife betray you in the worst way? Can you ever trust them again? I do not think I can. Chrissy's eyes flooded with tears. Jim, please believe me. I never intended to hurt you. I thought I could deal with it, but I couldn't. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have let things go to this point. I am sorry. Her voice quivered, but it was too late. The audience wasn't sure who to support for anymore. Some sided with Jim, while others supported Chrissy. However, the emotional sorrow on show was difficult to ignore. Even the most severe critics felt the weight of the situation. Camron remained silent for a minute, allowing the feelings between Jim and Chrissy to play out. Then he said, his voice calm yet forceful, I understand, dude. I honestly do. But I am not the one who needs to repair this. You all need to discuss, figure it out. Cause this isn't my war anymore. I'm out. With that, he stood up, adjusted his jacket, and left the set, leaving Jim and Chrissy alone in the wake of his comments. As the cameras continued to roll, the host addressed the crowd. What we've seen today is a raw, unedited glimpse into the lives of three people caught up in a whirlwind of betrayal, suffering, and broken trust. Jim, Chrissy, and Camron have given their souls to us, but the question remains, can they ever heal? Can they mend what's been broken, or is this the end of their friendship and maybe their relationships? The tension in the room was obvious. Chrissy sat quietly, hands clasped neatly in her lap. Jim stood a few steps away, his back to her and his eyes locked on the floor. Both were engrossed in their own thoughts, the consequences of their deeds weighing heavily on them. The audience was left wondering whether this was the last time they would see Jim and Chrissy together on TV, or if they could find a method to repair the fractured components. In the days that followed, social media was flooded with reactions. Some supporters sided with Jim, saying he deserved more than Chrissy. Others were empathetic, knowing the complexities of relationships and caring for both of them. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just a quarrel between pals. It was a public collapse, a high-profile fall from grace that everyone was watching and commenting on. The media frenzy persisted. Jim's mysterious social media remarks sparked curiosity. Some thought he was hinting at his next move, while others suspected he was secretly preparing retribution. Chrissy avoided social media, and her silence just added to the mystery. Camron, on the other hand, tweeted a cryptic tweet saying, "The truth will be revealed when it is time. I'm simply here for the trip." The countdown to the next part of this drama has already begun. Would Jim face Camron one final time? Will Chrissy find a way to redeem herself? And most crucially, would this be the end of their friendships, or was there still chance for reconciliation? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain, the world was watching, and they couldn't turn away. As the breakdown between JimJones and Camron intensified, the media frenzy surrounding the incident reached unprecedented heights. Every day, there appeared to be a new twist in the narrative, fresh facts spilled, and new emotions bursting forth. Jim, who is typically reserved, began to speak up about his frustrations. His admirers, who had been pulling for him throughout the turbulence, became concerned that the issue was getting out of hand. Was this the end of Jim and Camron's friendship? Will Chrissy's actions undermine everything they have built? It all started with one little video. Camron, who had always been renowned for his fun and occasionally erratic demeanor, made an unexpected move. He put out a mysterious statement on his social media pages, sending the internet into a frenzy. "It's never just about one person," he stated. "You believe you know everything, but you have no notion. Fans were left wondering, what was Camron hinting to? What did he intend by this? Soon later, a few old images appeared online, revealing that Camron and Chrissy were considerably closer than anybody had previously thought. These were not casual images. They appeared to hint at a deeper link that had been kept secret from the public for years. The photos did not convey the entire tale, but they did raise questions about Chrissy and Camron's relationship. Was there more going on between them than Jim had ever realized? What had Chrissy been hiding all along? The internet erupted. People began to develop their own conclusions, creating crazy stories about what may have transpired behind the scenes. Some speculated that Chrissy and Camron had been in a covert relationship for years, while others claimed that Jim had been caught off guard by something he hadn't expected. The rumors spread, and the issue became increasingly difficult. Chrissy, who had kept silent up until this point, was suddenly in the eye of the storm. Was she the victim, or was she guilty of betraying Jimmy? Meanwhile, JimJones was becoming more open about his emotions. In a live broadcast, he opened himself to his audience, his voice quivering with emotion. "I've spent years building my life with the people I trusted," he remarked, his voice filled with sadness. "And now? Everything seems to be going apart right now. Cam and Chrissy both turned on me, and I'm not sure what to trust anymore. I never expected to be in this position, yet here I am. I'm done playing nice. This is more than simply a quarrel. This is about betrayal." The admirers could hear the real passion in his voice and swamped the comments area with expressions of encouragement. Others, however, questioned if Jim was being overly theatrical or emotional, particularly in front of the cameras. Chrissy, for her part, kept silent for a time, but the strain was increasing. After weeks of witnessing the drama play, she eventually broke her silence. She addressed her followers on social media, but her statements appeared to exacerbate the pandemonium. "Sometimes life throws challenges your way that you never expected," she reported. "Sometimes you find yourself in situations over which you have no control. I've gone through a lot, and I don't have all the solutions. I simply want to go ahead and find peace. I never intended to injure anyone." The mysterious nature of her message simply added to the conjecture. Was she attempting to separate herself from the drama? Or was she truly sorry for her part in the mess? Fans couldn't decide, and the gap between her admirers and detractors widened. However, just when everyone believed the issue had peaked, Camron stirred the pot once again. He posted a mystery video that appeared to insult Jim while also revealing Chrissy's involvement. Camron was observed nonchalantly strolling along a corridor, chuckling as if nothing was amiss. "You all think you know what's going on, but trust me, this is just the beginning," he smirked. "Sometimes the people you believe you can trust aren't who they seem to be, and sometimes it's too late to repair the harm." His statement sent shockwaves across the entertainment industry. Had Camron just disclosed that there was more to the tale than we knew? What did he intend with his mysterious statement? The internet was inundated with new hypotheses, but no one could agree on what was actually happening. The following day, the situation reached a boiling point. JimJones and Camron were apparently supposed to meet face-to-face. Rumors began to circulate that they would finally have the long-awaited encounter. Both men had remained silent for a long, but they were now ready to confront one another and resolve their problems. Jim had made it apparent that he was eager for answers. He had no intentions of backing down. Camron, on the other hand, had been acting as if he had the upper hand, implying that he knew something that others didn't. The anxiety was awful. Fans were on edge, uncertain what might happen next. Would this be the moment everything was settled, or would it be the spark that set off an even larger explosion? The day of the encounter arrived, and the media went crazy. Cameras were put up, reporters gathered, and fans excitedly awaited the two men's meeting. The issue on everyone's mind was simple. Would they be able to talk it out, or will emotions flare up again? Chrissy, who had remained mostly mute in the background, was supposed to be present. Her presence just added fuel to the fire. Would she try to intercede, or would she let the males handle it themselves? Nobody knew what to anticipate, but one thing was certain. This would go down in history. As the cameras rolled, Jim and Camron entered the room. The atmosphere was dense with anxiety. Both men looked at one another for a minute, the weight of their prior friendship hanging in the air. Jim spoke first, without warning. "I'm done," he replied, his voice stern but full of passion. "I don't know what you've been up to, but I'm not going to let you keep fooling with me. I need answers immediately, and I'm done pretending everything is fine." The words remained heavily in the air as Camron stood there, his expression inscrutable. It was evident that this would not be a simple talk. The air in the room was heavy with tension as JimJones gazed at Camron, waiting for his reaction. Camron, the unpredictable figure, reclined against the wall, arms crossed across his chest. For a brief period, there was total quiet. Jim's remarks remained in the air, pushing Camron to speak out, defend himself, and explain the mayhem that had occurred between them. But Camron did not immediately answer. Instead, he looked away, as if pondering how to handle the issue. "You think you have it all figured out, right?" Camron eventually spoke, his voice low but steady. "Do you believe I am the one who fouled everything up?" "Nah, Jim. I'm only playing the hand I was handed. You know the game better than anybody else. However, your emotions have obscured your vision. Chrissy, the videos, everything. You're looking at everything wrong." His remarks struck Jim hard. Was Camron attempting to defend his actions? Was he attempting to deflect the responsibility away from himself? Jim felt his start to boil. This was not the apology he had hoped for, nor was it the type of response that could mend their years-long relationship. Jim's dismay was evident as he took a step forward. "You don't understand, do you?" Jim snapped. "This isn't about that dang game cam. This is about trust. You crossed the line. We were meant to be brothers, but you've been keeping things from me, Chrissy. Why was she involved in this mess? What exactly were you two up to behind my back?" His voice trembled slightly, revealing the weight of treachery in his words. Camron remained quiet for a time before revealing a small smirk. "You're acting like I'm the villain here," Camron replied, his voice full of cynicism. "Perhaps you should take a step back and look at what has been happening. You've been caught up in your emotions, searching for solutions you can't even manage. Chrissy is her own person, and anything she wants to do is up to her. But don't pretend you weren't involved in all of this." Camron's remarks stung, but Jim refused to back down. He tightened his hands and took another step forward. "You are telling me that I am to fault for all of this?" Jim inquired, his voice increasing in wrath. "I trusted you, Camron. You were supposed to be my man. We've gone through thick and thin together. And this is how you will repay me? By playing games and maintaining secrets?" The pain in Jim's voice was palpable. He had always respected Camron's tenacity and street smarts. Those virtues seemed to have been twisted into something poisonous. Camron's answer was icy and almost contemptuous. "I didn't do anything to you that you didn't already know deep down," Camron said, his voice low and sarcastic. "You've been living in a small bubble, believing everything was fine. But life doesn't work that way, Jim. You spent too much time faking and appearing as if you had everything under control. Well, guess what? The truth stings. It always does." Jim's cheeks flushed as rage rose up inside him. This was no longer about Chrissy or the video. It was about Camron's betrayal of their relationship. Jim could feel the weight of their years of friendship sliding away, and it was stifling. "Do you really think I'm going to accept this?" Jim inquired, his voice shaking with excitement. "Am I going to let you go away like this, after everything we've gone through?" Camron didn't appear fazed. He shrugged, as if he was bored by the talk. "Look, Jim, I'm not going to sit here and explain myself to you," Camron remarked casually. "I don't owe you that. We've gone through a lot, and if you're too blind to see, that's on you. I am not here to solve problems. I am here because you need to hear the truth. I did not initiate this conflict, Jim, but now that it's here, you have to deal with it." Jim stood there with his mind racing. Was Camron really so heartless? Did he genuinely not care about the devastation he had done? Jim's hands tightened into fists as he took another step closer to Camron, his gaze sharpening. "You've lost your damn mind. Jim snarled. "This is not about the truth. It's about you being a coward, hiding behind your lies and tricks. And now you're bringing Chrissy into it, using her as a sort of shield. I'm done with all of this. Cam, you don't get to meddle with my life like this. I trusted you, and you shattered it into a million pieces." There was a period of stillness between them, and the tension grew with each passing second. Camron looked back at Jim, his face opaque. He took a big breath and spoke again, this time with more seriousness. "Maybe I've messed up, Jim," Camron whispered gently. "Maybe I made mistakes, but I never intended to hurt you. This is larger than us and all of our little drama. You have to realize that, but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking you to forget everything. All I can say is that it is as it is. We each have issues to cope with, and perhaps one day we can understand each other better. But not today, not now." Jim's heart raced in his chest. He could feel the weight of Cameron's remarks, but it didn't make things any better. The treachery and the falsehoods were too much to stomach. "You've changed, man," Jim muttered, his voice full of anguish. "I'm not sure whether I can forgive you for that." Camron did not answer, but his gaze softened for a brief instant. The two men stood there in quiet, their years of friendship and shared history hanging between them like a frail thread, ready to snap at any time. As the confrontation came to an end, JimJones turned his back on Camron, his heart burdened with unresolved feelings. He was aware that this event would haunt him for a long time. What had once been a fraternity was now ripped apart by secrets, treachery, and the fallout from a single viral video. Jim had no idea what the future held for him and Camron, but one thing was certain: their relationship would never be the same again. As Jim walked away, he couldn't escape the sensation that the worst was still to come. The audience was still waiting for the entire tale, the final chapter of the drama, to unravel. The video, the rumors, the accusations, everything was still out there, and it was only a matter of time until the media focused on them again. Jim wasn't sure how much more he could take, but he knew that no matter what occurred next, the damage would be irreversible. Camron, on the other hand, was left standing there, alone with his thoughts. It was unclear if he would continue to play the villain or ultimately admit everything. But one thing was certain: the drama between him and JimJones had reached a breaking point, and the entire world was watching, waiting for the next chapter in this combustible feud. Wow, what an emotional ride! JimJones and Camron's friendship has been shattered, and it's evident that their rivalry is far from finished. But what do you think? Do you believe Jim was correct to confront Camron, or do you think Camron has a good point in all of this? What about Chrissy's involvement? How do you think that impacted the drama? Please share your ideas in the comments below. If you're still on the edge of your seat and want to know what happens next, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We have more explosive tales coming up, and you won't want to miss a single one. Click the bell button to get informed when we post new videos breaking the greatest celebrity news and controversy. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this awful situation? Tell us how you would handle the situation if you were Jim or Camron. Your opinion is important, so share it with us.